In the spring of 1981, an unsettling narrative began to take root in the American consciousness. It started with whispers on school playgrounds and anxious conversations between parents. From the suburbs of Boston, stories emerged of menacing clowns attempting to lure children into vans with promises of candy. And this was the beginning of the phantom clown panic, a recurring phenomenon of mass hysteria that would define a decade that was full of anxiety about the safety of its children. These were not your typical happy party clowns or circus performers. They were specters of fear, modern boogeymen who materialized from social dread only to vanish without a trace whenever the authorities arrived. This is the story of the phantom clown panic of the 1980s. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny, and we are back with another spooky, disturbing story. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like and share this video. The term phantom clowns was first coined in 1981 by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, and it captures the essence of these events. The clowns were figures that were seen but were never found. In a way, they embodied the American psyche of the 1980s, and they became an enduring part of American urban legend and folklore. The initial wave of phantom clown sightings began in 1981, and it established a story that would be long-lasting. It spread like a contagion of fear, transmitted through playground rumors, and it was amplified by the police. The panic traveled from a local scare in New England to a regional crisis in the Midwest, and that shows how urban legends can be legitimized and spread and then transformed into perceived reality. America began its decades-long struggle with scary clowns in May of 1981 in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. The first stories originated with children at Lawrence Elementary School. According to the story, two men dressed as clowns were attempting to lure them into an older model black van by offering candy. The description of the vehicle had details like ladders on the side, a broken front taillight, no hubcaps, made the story seem real. This is, of course, a common characteristic in effective urban legends. The idea of authenticity of the story helps the story spread. And the police reacted swiftly and seriously, which helped the story escalate from a playground rumor to a full-blown public panic. School principals across Boston were officially warned of the clown threat, and many sent memos home to parents, effectively spreading the children's claims, endorsing them as true. The Boston Police Department issued a bulletin for officers to be on the lookout for this van. The story even made the May 7th, 1981 issue of the Boston Globe, with an article titled "Pupils Warned of Clowns." And this transformed the story into a legitimate news story and a credible threat in the eyes of the community. Despite the flurry of police activity and a rash of subsequent sightings across the Boston area, a pattern would emerge that would define the entire phantom clown panic. There was no evidence. All of the initial reports and subsequent reports came exclusively from very young children, typically between the ages of 5 and 7. No adult, parent, teacher, or police officer ever witnessed the clowns or the van firsthand. Extensive police searches has turned up nothing. The clowns of Boston were ghosts. The events in Boston show how these type of moral panics take hold. The process began with a frightening story told by children. Authority figures acting out of doing their job took the story seriously. The validation then had the unintended consequences of legitimizing the urban legend. The official warnings and police bulletins were meant to protect the children from a potential threat, but instead they served as an amplifier, confirming for parents and the wider community that the threat was real. And this was a cycle. A rumor was treated as fact by authorities, which in turn fuels public belief and generates more rumors. This is a core mechanism of the engine of a moral panic. The reaction of authorities became a more significant factor in spreading the fear than the initial story itself. Within days of the first report in Massachusetts, the phantom clown narrative leaped across the country to the Midwest, which was remarkable considering this was the pre-internet era. In Kansas City, Missouri, police began receiving multiple reports of a menacing clown, but the story had begun to change, adapting to its new environment. The story changed from 2 clowns to 1 clown, and the black van became a bright yellow one. And the lure of candy was changed with a direct threat. The clown was reported to be brandishing a knife or maybe a sword. The local Kansas City response mirrored that of Boston, further entrenching the panic. Administrators at Our Lady and St. Rose School circulated a letter to parents containing a chilling warning. There have been reports of a character called Killer Clown jumping out of the bushes and threatening children with a knife. Naming the figure as Killer Clown marked an escalation in the story. The Kansas City police were inundated with between 60 and 100 calls related to the sightings. But, just as in Boston, the panic was fleeting. After a flurry of reports on May 15, 1981, the calls abruptly ceased by that evening, and extensive police investigators found no suspects, no yellow van, and no evidence of a killer clown. The panic spread to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In June 1981, there were reports of menacing clowns surfacing. And here, the clown narrative became entangled with one of the most terrifying real-world crime stories of the era. The Pittsburgh police were the first to publicly speculate on a connection between the clown sightings and the Atlanta child murders, a series of killings between 1979 and 1981 that had terrorized the nation and specifically targeted black children. Investigators noted that the sightings in both Pittsburgh and Kansas City were concentrated in predominantly black neighborhoods, which suggests that the clown panic could be a localized reaction to the very fear of a predator targeting their community. The hysteria in Pittsburgh reached such a pitch that the police reportedly sent a search party of 100 kids with clubs and 2 canine units into the woods near a housing project to hunt for a suspected child molester dressed as a clown. Great police work there. Just send in the kids, right? The 1981 clown wave was the beginning of a recurring urban legend cycle. Throughout the 1980s, the phantom clown narrative would lie dormant for periods of time before re-emerging in different parts of the country. And this showed off that the story had durability. Although these incidents were smaller in scale and confirmed that the menacing clown had become an entrenched figure in the American pantheon of modern boogeymen. After the initial panic in 1981 subsided, the phantom clown narrative resurfaced periodically, each time with slight variations that adapted to the local community while preserving the core elements of the legend. In 1985, reports emerged from Phoenix, Arizona of clown gangs stalking the city. The evolution of narratives from a lone clown or a pair of clowns into organized gangs were a escalation, again, of the threat. The story was about a coordinated group of evil clowns. And as with the previous sightings, the reports were investigated and were ultimately unsubstantiated. 3 years later, in March 1988, the panic happened in a 3-county area in and around Louisville, Kentucky. Children began calling the police with stories of clowns, this time one driving a red pickup truck who was offering them rides. Once again, the outcome was the same. Despite police investigations, no arrests were ever made, and the clown and his truck vanished without a trace. The consistency of the story across different years and in different areas is the most compelling evidence of this urban legend. Folklorists like Jan Harold Brundtland argue that successful urban legends rely on a stable, easily transmissible template, and the phantom clown story had all the necessary characteristics. And the core elements were always consistent. A clown-costumed, anonymous figure that looked menacing, a vehicle used for abduction, and a lure, typically children or money, to get children. And there were always child eyewitnesses as the sole source of the reports, and a complete lack of physical evidence or adult sightings. The story is simple. Don't trust strangers, especially strangers dressed as clowns, no matter how appealing their offer. The fact that this story kept re-emerging shows that this phantom clown story had become almost like a latent cultural virus. After the initial outbreak in 1981, the story didn't just disappear. It became a piece of modern American urban legend passed between children on playgrounds and stored in the minds of anxious parents. It would lay dormant and then be reactivated by a local trigger. A news report from another town, a child's nightmare, or just the simple spooky power of a story told in the dark. This pattern is inconsistent with any real criminal activity, but it does align with the transmission of urban legends. These phantom clowns were a self-perpetuating story to be told over and over again. The phantom clown panic of the 1980s was a symptom of a specific cultural moment, a manifestation of deep-seated fears that had been building for years. The painted, smiling face of the clown became a mask of a host of fears related to child safety, stranger-on-stranger violence, and the perceived decay of a safe, predictable world. The early 1980s were the zenith of the stranger danger moral panic in the United States. Before this time, child abductions by strangers rarely garnered national attention, and this changed dramatically with several high-profile cases that seized public imagination and were amplified by a burgeoning 24-hour news cycle. The disappearance of 6-year-old Etan Potts in New York City in 1979, followed by the abduction and unaliving of 6-year-old Adam Walsh in Florida in 1981, transformed the abstract fear of child abduction into a terrifyingly concrete reality for millions of parents. These tragedies spurred a national movement. The faces of missing children began appearing on milk cartons, a presence on breakfast tables across the country. Television docudramas and after-school specials reached massive audiences. The intense media focus created a distorted perception of risk. Statistics consistently show that the vast majority of missing children were runaways and that abductions by strangers were exceptionally rare. Nonetheless, the narrative of the predatory stranger became a dominant cultural fear. The phantom clown narrative slotted perfectly into this framework of anxiety. The clown in the van was the ultimate stranger, anonymous, unpredictable, and intent on harming children. The panic was the channeling of an existing pervasive fear into a new and memorable form. The 1980s also had some very real monsters whose actions provided a real-world basis for the evil clown archetype. The most significant of these was John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Arrested in 1978 for the murder of at least 33 young men and children, Gacy became a national obsession. It was discovered that he had performed at children's parties and charity events as Pogo the Clown. Although Gacy did not commit the crimes while in costume, the media's relentless focus on his clown persona welded the image of the friendly entertainer to that of a sadistic serial killer in the public mind. When the first reports of menacing clowns emerged just a few years later, the public imagination had already been primed to accept the plausibility of a clown as a figure of profound evil. Also, as we discussed, the Atlanta child murders from 1979 to 1981 provided an ongoing source of terror, as the authorities in Pittsburgh and Kansas City noted. News reports detailing the search for a killer of black children dominating the headlines, and the emergence of an urban legend child snatcher in those same communities was a reflection of that fear. So the Phantom Clown panic was a perfect storm of American fears at the time. It was a figure that came from multiple streams of fear. The abstract terror of the anonymous stranger from the missing children panic provided the concrete, horrifying images of real-life killer clown John Wayne Gacy provided the character, and the threat of child abduction, amplified by the ongoing tragedy in Atlanta, provided the plot. The clown became the ultimate urban legend devil for the era precisely because it was an amalgamation of all of these fears. This all occurred in an era before social media, and so it spread through a transmission chain of school playgrounds, passed between children as a frightening rumor. From there, it moved to the home as children relayed the stories to their concerned parents. Alarmed, parents would contact school administrators and local police, elevating the rumor to the level of an official complaint. The police would issue warnings and launch investigations, which were then reported by the local news and television station. The media coverage would create a wider audience and would then seed the narrative into new communities where a new generation of children would hear the story and the cycle would begin again. This is how things went viral before the internet. It's slower than how things work now, but it was highly effective because each step in the chain added a layer of authority to the baseless rumor. When you look at the Phantom Clown panic of the 1980s critically, it collapsed. It's a classic urban legend. Folklorist Lauren Coleman did a significant amount of work of identifying and analyzing the true nature of the 1980s clown side. Coleman was one of the first to notice a distinct pattern in the reports. He documented his findings in his seminal 1983 book, Mysterious America, in which he coined the term phantom clowns to describe the phenomenon. Coleman debunked the theory as follows. The reports were almost exclusively from young children. The narratives were remarkably similar across geographic and disparate locations, and despite widespread police investigations, no physical evidence of any kind was ever found. These are not characteristics of a criminal conspiracy, but they are the hallmarks of urban legend. The Phantom Clown was a modern boogeyman, a figure of living folklore. And the sightings can be analyzed as a classic urban legend, conforming to the criteria established by Jan Harold Brunvart. The stories were compelling and frightening. They were presented as true accounts of recent events, and they contained a clear cautionary moral for children and parents alike. Don't talk to strangers, or the world is not as safe as you think it is. The figure of a clown is unsettling to many people, a condition known as coulrophobia. Researchers like Benjamin Radford, who wrote a book called Bad Clowns, have explored the psychological underpinnings of the fear of clowns, and that also provides an explanation for this panic. People find clowns creepy for a variety of reasons. One is the uncanny valley, a state of cognitive dissonance that occurs when an object is highly familiar yet suddenly wrong. A clown's face has human features, but they are exaggerated and distorted by makeup into a fixed, unnatural expression. This creates a sense of unease as the brain struggles to categorize what it is seeing. Second, the clown's makeup and costumes serve to hide the wearer's true identity and emotions. The ambiguity is inherently threatening. We rely on facial cues to gauge intent, and the clown's painted smile conceals whether the person beneath is friendly or malevolent, making them dangerously unpredictable. Finally, the historical role of clowns is that of a trickster or a jester, a figure who operates outside of the normal social conventions and is permitted to engage in strange behavior. The cultural baggage primes us to expect the unexpected from a clown, adding to the sense of unease and potential danger. From a sociological perspective, the entire 1980s phantom clown phenomenon can be framed as a textbook moral panic. This concept was developed by sociologist Stanley Cohen, and it describes a situation where a particular group or condition becomes defined as a threat to societal values and interests, with the reaction being widely disproportionate to the actual threat posed. The clown panic had all of the key stages and actors of a classic moral panic. The folk devils were the phantom clown, who were socially defined as a grave threat to the safety of children. The moral entrepreneurs were the concerned parents, school officials, and police, who took the initial reports seriously and therefore amplified the threat and campaigned for action. The mass media, especially the local news, played a critical role in the amplification spiral, presenting the threat in a stylized and stereotypical fashion that created widespread public concern. And this led to a social reaction: fear, warnings, police investigations that were entirely out of proportion to the objective reality, in which there was zero evidence of any actual harm caused by clowns, or even any evidence of the existence of these clowns. But perhaps the most definitive piece of the evidence debunking the phantom clown phenomenon is the consistent incompetence of the clowns themselves. Even though there were hundreds of reported sightings and alleged abduction attempts throughout the 1980s, not a single child was ever physically harmed, let alone successfully kidnapped. This 100% failure rate is a statistical impossibility for any genuine, widespread criminal enterprise. Okay, sure, they were clowns, but come on, guys. A real conspiracy of child abductors operating across multiple states would eventually succeed by the laws of probability. The clown's failure is a necessity for the urban legend itself. Urban legends and cautionary tales require a survivor. Therefore, the child must escape to tell the tale, thereby telling the story and reinforcing its moral lesson to the next listener. The clowns being clowns is a core feature of the urban legend, proving that the stories were myths designed to spread a warning, not an actual report of events. The Phantom Clown Panic of the 1980s is a remarkable case study in the creation and dissemination of a modern urban legend. The analysis of the incidents, their social context, and the psychological power of the clown leads to an unavoidable conclusion. The menacing clowns of the 1980s were not a criminal conspiracy. They were an urban legend. They were phantoms born of the perfect storm of fear, a projection of the era's fears of stranger danger, child abduction, and real-life monsters onto the uniquely unsettling figure of the clown. The panic was a collective nightmare, given shape by playground rumors and given authority by the police and the media that were seeking to protect the public. The legacy of the 1980s firmly cemented the evil clown as a premier trope in horror movies and in popular culture. Stephen King's iconic novel, It, featuring the demonic clown Pennywise, was published in 1986, 5 years after the initial wave of sighting. It's more than likely that the real-world panic in 1981 influenced Stephen King, which is a fascinating bridge between urban legend and fiction. It's also interesting to look at the clown panic of 2016 in the eyes of the clown panic of the 1980s. The 1980s panic was pre-digital. It was limited by the speed of local news and word of mouth. It resulted in purely phantom clowns, figures who existed only in eyewitness testimony and were never captured on camera. The 2016 panic was an internet-fueled phenomenon. Social media platforms allowed for the global transmission instantaneously of rumors and images, accelerating the panic on an unprecedented scale. This new technology also created the type of figure of the stalker clown. These were real people, often pranksters or attention seekers, who dressed as clowns specifically to be filmed and have their images go viral. The 2016 panic blurred the lines between the phantom and the real. The hoaxes and pranks gave credence to more urban legends and unsubstantiated sightings. How the phantom clowns of the 1980s became the stalker clowns of 2016 is a story of how technology has fundamentally altered the way that we create, share, and ultimately live out our modern urban legends. Our fear of clowns remains, but these clowns are now everywhere. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you click like and share this video. Follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, and TikTok. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, leave a comment and tell me about it. Or if you like the video, leave a comment and tell me about it. Or if you're feeling shy, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a link in the description of this video to buy me a coffee, so you can buy me a coffee. Or you can become a member of this channel. For the $1.99 tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos, and get access to my videos before they go public. I appreciate you considering this. I'm going to put the names of all of the people who have donated to this channel here, and I'm going to put the names of all of the members of this channel here. Thank you all very much. You also support me by clicking like, sharing, and continuing to watch my videos. And I appreciate you watching my videos. And please stay spooky.